Here we are again. Now let's see. Ready for an adventure? Jack was a poor boy who lived with his widowed mother in a tumble-down cottage in the country. Jack was, well, to be frank, he was lazy, and when his mother sent him to dig in the garden, he just leaned on his spade and dreamed. So Jack's mother had to earn the living, and this she did, by selling the milk from their good cow, Daisy Bell. One hot summer, there had been no rain for months, and the grass had turned brown. With little to eat, poor Daisy Bell grew thinner and thinner, and her milk dried up. So Jack and his mother had no milk either, and they had no butter and no cheese to eat or to sell. So they too grew thinner and thinner. One day Jack's mother said, "Jack, we must sell our good cow Daisy Bell, and we must buy food with the money. Take her to market and get a good price." So Jack set off down the road with Daisy Bell. He hadn't gone far when suddenly an old woman appeared in the middle of the road. Jack rubbed his eyes. Now, where had she come from? "Hello, my fine young man," said the old woman. "Where are you off to?" "I'm going to market, ma'am, to sell Daisy Bell." "Sell your cow, eh? I hope you're good at buying and selling." "Of course," said Jack. "Prove it," said the old woman. "How many beans make 5? 2 in your left hand, 2 in your right, and 1 in your mouth," said Jack. "Right," croaked the old woman, "and there you are." And she held out 5 large but very funny-looking beans. "I'll give you these for the cow." "Beans," said Jack scornfully. "I want money and a good price too." "These are magic beans," said the old woman. "Better than any money you'll ever see." Well, you remember, Jack was a dreamer, so not knowing why, but somehow with confidence, he gave her Daisy Bell and he took the beans. "If you don't think they're magic, by tomorrow you can have your cow back," the old woman called after him. And without even a puff of smoke, she and Daisy Bell disappeared. So Jack went home. "How much did you get for the cow?" asked his mother. "An old woman gave me 5 magic beans," said Jack. "And if they aren't magic, we can have Daisy Bell back tomorrow." "You fool! And who is this old woman, and where does she live?" Well, Jack didn't know, of course, and he began to think he hadn't been very clever after all. And as for his mother, she was so angry that she snatched the beans from his hand and she threw them out of the window. But before you could say knife, to the wonder of Jack and to the horror of his mother, one of the beans began to sprout. They couldn't believe their eyes. It grew, and it grew, and it grew, up, 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 an enormous beanstalk. "It's magic," said Jack. "I'm going up." "But you don't know where you're going," said his mother. "That's the point," said Jack, as he disappeared into the green leaves of the enormous beanstalk. Then at last he came out into the brilliant sunlight above the clouds. He had arrived at the top of the beanstalk. He looked around. "A pathway," said Jack. "I wonder where it goes." And immediately he set off to find out. He came to an enormous castle. He knocked on the door. The door opened, and there stood a big, big woman. "What do you want?" "I'm hungry," yelled Jack. "Look here, young man, this is no place for you. My husband, the giant, could eat two like you for dinner." "But I'm a boy," shouted Jack. "My giant loves boys for dinner," said the big, big woman. Now Jack was very frightened, but he was also very hungry. "Please," he said. "All right," said the big, big woman, and she led the way into the kitchen. And she gave Jack a slice of bread as big as a door. He had only just started on it when the whole place began to shake. "Quick, hide in the oven." There was a roar like a terrible thunderstorm, and into the kitchen came the giant. He stood in the middle of the room, and he sniffed, and he sniffed, and then he roared, "Fee, fi, fo, fum! I smell the blood of an Englishman. Be he alive or be he dead, I'll grind his bones to make my bread." But his wife said, "Nonsense, nonsense, lovey." And she put a carcass of roasted beef as big as a chair on the table before him. The giant ate it in only a few gulps. Then he got out his bags of gold to count. He yawned, and he counted, and he counted, and he yawned, and then he fell fast asleep, and he snored. Jack jumped out of the oven, picked up one of the bags of gold, and ran off as fast as his legs would carry him. Still a long way from the beanstalk, he heard a terrible roar. The giant was coming after him. Then, just when he thought he could run no further, Jack reached the beanstalk, half climbing, half sliding. Down he went until he was safe in his own garden. "Oh, Jack! Oh, my darling, darling boy!" cried his mother. But Jack said, "Look what I've got." And he showed her the gold. They were rich, or so it seemed. But one day they found that they had spent all the gold. Should he go back to the giant's castle? Well, being Jack, he didn't hesitate. And just as he got there, the door opened, and there stood the big, big woman. "You again?" she shouted. "Just visiting," said Jack. And again she let him in. A few minutes later, the whole place began to shake. Jack jumped into the oven, and at the same moment into the kitchen came the giant, roaring, "Fee, fi, fo, fum! I smell the blood of an Englishman. Be he alive or be he dead, I'll grind his bones to make my bread." But the big, big woman only laughed at him. "Come, come, lovey." And she put a bowl of stew as big as a bathtub on the table. The giant was hungry, and he ate it in a moment. Then, yawning, he got out his magic harp. "Play," he commanded it. And the harp played sweet music. Of course, Jack heard it, and Jack was enchanted, and Jack knew that he must have that harp. He waited. Soon, sure enough, as was his habit, the giant fell into a deep sleep. At the third snore, Jack jumped out of the oven. He seized the beautiful instrument, and he made for the door. But the harp cried, "Master! Master!" And the giant awoke. Now the chase was really on. Jack ran as fast as he could, but a harp is an awkward thing to carry, and the giant was only a little way behind. At times Jack felt the giant's breath hot on the back of his neck. But he reached the beanstalk first. He jumped onto it, slid down, and was soon safely in his own garden. Jack's mother was overjoyed to see her son safe again. "Play," Jack commanded the harp, and it played the most beautiful music. "Wonderful, wonderful," said his mother. But no one can live on music alone. So for the third time, Jack climbed the beanstalk. He walked up the path. He got to the castle. This time the door was ajar. The castle seemed empty. He slipped into the kitchen. What was that? A noise like thunder. Jack leapt into the basket with the dirty clothes. "Fee, fi, fo, fum! I smell the blood of an Englishman. I smell him too," roared his wife. She opened the oven. Jack wasn't there. They looked round the kitchen. He wasn't there. Into the cupboards. He wasn't there. Under the mat, behind the door. No, not there. And the big woman put a pie as big as a bed on the table to comfort the giant. And he ate it. And then, feeling satisfied, he fetched his magic hen. "Lay," he commanded, and the hen laid a golden egg. Now Jack could see him this time, and his eyes nearly popped out of his head. A golden egg! As before, the giant fell asleep. As before, Jack came out from his hiding place, moved stealthily across the room, seized the hen, and off he ran. But the hen squawked, and the giant awoke. Again, the race was on. Jack got to the beanstalk first, started down, but this time the giant was so mad he started down the beanstalk too. It shook and it swayed with his weight, and Jack shouted as he slid down, "Mother! Mother! Fetch the axe! The axe!" He took the axe from his mother, and with all his strength he struck that beanstalk with one wild, desperate stroke. Down came the beanstalk, and the giant came with it. They fell so hard that the giant went right through the earth, and he disappeared, leaving only a huge hole in the ground. Well, now we have come to the end of our story. Just remember this. Jack was lazy, and from his point of view, it's too bad that he still has to chop up that beanstalk to get rid of it. And even worse, that he has to use his spade to fill in the hole made by the giant. But there's no doubt about it, Jack has a promising future. If you have a hen who can lay a golden egg when you say lay, and if you have a harp which can play a magic tune when you say play, you really do not have very much to worry about. And you have learned that he who takes a chance has a chance. The merchant lived in a big house with his 3 daughters. All were beautiful, but the 2 elder ones were vain and selfish. The third was even more beautiful than either sister, and she was kind and loving. No wonder her father called her Beauty. Then one day, disaster struck. 3 of the merchant's best ships were reported lost. He was ruined, and he had to take his family to live on a small farm which he owned in the country. Well, the elder girls just sat around complaining, while Beauty milked the cow, kneaded the bread, and swept the floors. After some time, news came that one of the merchant's ships had been found. "Thank God," cried the 2 elder daughters together. "We'll be rich again. Father, bring us satin, brocade, silk, jewels, fine clothes, horses, a carriage." "Yes," said the merchant, "and Beauty, what shall I bring to you?" "Oh," she said carelessly, "just, well, yes, a blood-red rose." "You shall have it," said the merchant, and he rode off. But alas, disappointment was waiting for him. The law claimed both ship and cargo. Months went by in legal argument. The merchant lost his case, and he was penniless. And there was naught for him to do but to go home empty-handed, no presents for anyone. By now it was winter and cold, and the journey seemed endless. He felt bogged down by dull despair. What would the future bring? He rounded a corner, and there before him was a gateway. The gates were open. Not thinking, and certainly not intending to trespass, the merchant entered the gate and went down the long drive. At the end of the drive was a beautiful but small palace. The door of the palace stood open. Strange, thought the merchant. He entered the palace. He called. No one answered. He entered the great hall and he called again. Still no answer, albeit everything is set, as if waiting for someone. For me? Well, why not? His conscience answered him. So he sat down and he began to eat. The food was delicious, and the heat of the fire was a welcome change from the cold outside. Feeling refreshed, he wandered about the gardens. Suddenly, a beautiful rose caught his eye. A rose in winter. Ah, of course, he remembered. I promised Beauty, so without real thought, he picked the rose. There was a sudden howl, and there stood a terrifying creature with a beast's head. And he put his hands round the merchant's throat, but they were not hands. They were paws with long claws. The merchant was terrified. "Please, don't kill me," gasped the merchant. "You steal my rose," said the beast coldly. "Is that how you thank me for my hospitality? I meant no harm. I promised a single rose to my daughter Beauty." The beast growled, but he took his claws away from the merchant's throat. "Go," he said, "but in 1 week's time you must return here, and you must bring your daughter with you. If not, you will regret it." And with a strange moan, he disappeared. "I promised," began the merchant, but there was no one there to hear him. What was it? Who was it? A beast? A man? Who? And before he could think further, he found that he was home. Beauty was overjoyed to see her father again. "My darling daughter," the merchant said, clasping her to him. And then, giving her the blood-red rose, he told her all that had happened in the palace of the beast. "We will return immediately," said Beauty. So the next morning they were on their way, and the nearer they drew to the palace, the more apprehensive they became. As before, the gates were open. The door was open. The lights were on. They went in when they called, but no one answered. Finally, they ate the supper which obviously had been laid out for them, and it was indeed delicious, and then they went upstairs. In one room on the dressing table was a beautiful blood-red rose, and beside it was a gold ring. The beast seems thoughtful, Beauty mused. So the next morning, Beauty persuaded her father that he must go, and he must leave her alone in the palace with the beast. Reluctantly, her father departed. The beast did not appear until the next evening. Suddenly, in the flickering light, he stood before her. "Oh, oh," cried Beauty in amazement, and her heart seemed to stop beating. The beast spoke gently. You have come to keep your father's promise. Are you not afraid?" Beauty was too frightened to reply. "I understand, of course. May I bid you good evening?" And so saying, the beast disappeared. Next night the beast came in again, and every evening it was the same. By degrees, Beauty and the beast found more and more to talk about. Then one night, the beast said very simply, "Beauty, will you marry me?" "Oh, beast," said Beauty, her heart sinking, "I like you very much, but I could never marry you. No, never." And the beast sighed, and he bowed his head in despair. Evening followed evening. Always it was the same question. "Beauty, will you marry me?" And always Beauty shook her head. "I cannot marry you," she said. She felt sorry for the poor beast, but what was she to do? Then she thought of her father. "I wish that I could talk to him. Perhaps he could help me to find a solution." She was standing before a mirror, and suddenly, pictured there, she saw her father, but he was alone, and he was ill. Her two sisters had simply abandoned him and left him to fend for himself. Now she knew that she must see him. Beauty waited for evening as usual. The beast came into the great hall. "Beast," said Beauty simply, "my father needs me." "All right. Beauty, you shall go. Just place your ring on your pillow and wish. But be back before the end of the month, or I shall die." I promise, dear beast." And the next morning she found herself in her father's cottage. The old merchant almost fainted with joy when he saw her. So Beauty cared for her father, and she nursed him back to health. Just before the month was up, her two sisters came to call. Bit by bit, they heard her strange story. Then, with evil in their hearts, they plotted to keep her beyond the end of the month. "Then the beast will be angry and he will kill her," said the elder, "and then we can share her jewels and her clothes." To further their wicked scheme, they said, "Our father needs you, sister, only you." And Beauty believed them, and she stayed on. But somehow, she kept worrying about the beast. So again she stood before the mirror. "I wish," she murmured, "I wish." And in a flash, pictured in the mirror, she could see the garden, and there, beneath the blood-red roses, lay the beast, as though dead. "I must go," cried Beauty, and without more ado she took off her ring, she laid it on her pillow, and she said, "I wish to be with my beast." "Beast, oh beast," cried Beauty, "I've come back." But the beast lay motionless. "I am dying," he murmured, "dying. You didn't come, and I know now that you will never love me." "Oh, but I do," said Beauty. "I do love you, and I would like to marry you, and I would like to be with you all the days of my life." And as gently as the fall of a rose petal, she put her arms around the ugly beast, and she kissed him full on the mouth. Suddenly, the beast disappeared, and there instead was a handsome young man. "Oh, no, no, beast, where are you?" she cried in despair. "I am here," said the young man. "No, no," said Beauty. "Yes," said the young man. "I was under a cruel spell. It could only be broken if someone loved me and promised that she would marry me. So they stood in each other's arms, trembling with wonder and with love. Now, we all know that people do not always get what they deserve, but Beauty did. You see, she had learned that fine presents can come wrapped in brown paper. So with the Beast. He was so good, so kind, so gentle of voice, so dear, in fact, that she had quite forgotten that his exterior was not conventionally acceptable. Oh, Beast, for she would always call him thus, is this possible? Quite, said the young man. So they both sighed with delight. And, well, why go on? They were married, and they lived. Ah, you've guessed it. They lived happily ever after.